Hi, I'm Melinda, and today I'm going to talk to you about presentations. And here you can see the important phases of your preparation. Across the top, you can see that it starts with you and finishes with your audience. Basically, there are three main stages to preparation. The first stage is content. This is where you have your initial idea, you refine it, and then you start to think of it in terms of telling a story where you take your audience on an arc as they follow your ideas and thoughts on a topic. Then there's the design phase, where you consider your visual concepts and your graphics. Basically, you are thinking of the overall look of your presentation. And finally, there's the delivery phase, where you need to consider what you are going to say and how you are going to say it. But right now, we're going to start by looking at the content phase, and that begins with your first idea. So, our first ideas will include the who and the what. So we'll look at people and materials. Imagine that you have 10 minutes for your presentation and you have 3 people in your group. If we do a quick bit of maths, we soon realize that each speaker will have around 3 minutes. Now that's important too. If it's for an assessment and you are all being marked and one person only speaks for, say, 48 seconds, their mark is going to be pretty bad. They'll fail. And on the other hand, if someone goes much over 3 minutes, they'll lose a lot of marks too. You need to ensure that the speaking is shared fairly evenly. If your presentation is based on a report, then you've probably finished your report and you've got the content, and now you need to work out how to divide that amongst the 3 of you. And one thing to consider is that a presentation is quite similar structurally to an essay. It has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So you need to start by providing some background to say why your topic is important. You need a thesis statement to tell the listeners what you'll be talking about. You could include a slide with a table of contents at this point. You'll have your body or main ideas with examples, and then you'll have your conclusion, which will involve reminding the listener of the main points you have just been talking about. Okay, so that's your first or initial ideas. What's next? Now you need to refine or improve on these ideas. I'll do the introduction and methods. Well, I can do the findings and I'll start the discussion. Okay, then I can finish the discussion and do the conclusions and recommendations. Now your basic structure of who is doing what is organized, and you need to start thinking about the content of your own section. And it's perfectly okay to skip parts of the report. You only need to present the highlights or findings that will be most interesting or important. You can think of the whole presentation as a story, and like a story, it has a beginning, middle, and an end. It could have a bit of drama, and should of course have some interest. When a movie is made, the script is first presented in this format. It's called a storyboard. The writers think about the script in terms of scenes. What will happen in this scene? What's next? What will it look like? What will it sound like? What's happening in each scene? And you might find it useful to plan your presentation using a storyboard. Whatever you do, you have to realize that preparation for your presentation takes time and focus. You can't leave it until the last moment. It's a creative act that requires you to put in the time and the thought, so you should be planning already. And we looked at this diagram earlier, showing the 3 stages of preparation. We've looked at content. In another video, we'll look at delivery. But now we're going to look at design, which involves coming up with an overall visual concept and looking at graphics. And firstly, you need to come up with a colour scheme. Most advice is to limit it to 3 or 4 colours and to be consistent across each slide in terms of your colours. You can vary which ones you use as background and which ones you use for text if you want to, but the recommendation is always to work within your chosen palette. Not everyone has perfect vision, so you need to ensure that the contrast is good between the background and any text. In my slides for this presentation, I chose a light blue background and black text. What do you think? Easy to read? And what do you think about the 3 sample palettes on this slide? Do you like those colour combinations? Would you use those? Now, one thing to think about is that there are some colour combinations that are not recommended. Apparently, around 8% of men are colourblind, and in particular, many men have a problem with red and green. They can look like the same colour, so those men won't be able to read the text in red and green on this slide. It makes you wonder why traffic lights are green and red, but that's another story. Orange and blue are not good because of the vibrations of the colours. For me, they look normal, and I quite like the combination, but if other people are having problems, it's best to avoid them. Red and blue also vibrate in a way that makes them difficult to see. And again, this contrast between font and background is best avoided. So consider your colour scheme carefully. Use a maximum of 4 colours and ensure that the contrast is good. Now, another area to consider is graphics. If you want to use pictures, how many and where? The current thinking is that big is good. Choose graphics carefully and make them big. If you put text over a graphic, it can be difficult to read. One solution that sometimes works is to use a text outline, but here the subtitle is still difficult to read, so maybe there's a better solution. This is an alternative that allows us to use a large picture and still have clear text. If we do this, we will want to ensure that the other slides match. All of our slides need to use colours from our original palette of 4 colours, and there needs to be a consistency of graphic elements across the slides. So here is another slide, and you can see how we've picked up the design. Even though it isn't exactly the same, there is an underlying visual concept. You need to make sure that all of your slides look like they belong to one set. There need to be colours and graphic elements linking them. Okay, so back to pictures, and here is a way to write across a picture while ensuring that the font is easy to see. This can look good on a title slide. Consider your 4 colours and work something like this in. It's quite easy to do by clicking on your full colour picture, clicking Format, and then the Colour tab. So your graphics are an important area to consider, and it seems that big is good. Another important area is your fonts. As a general rule, stick to just 2 or 3 fonts. All your subheads should be in the same font, and your body text should be the same font. This makes it easy for your audience to see the hierarchy or the structure of what you are saying. And one very important point is your font size should be large enough to be easily seen by everyone in the room. As a rough rule, don't go smaller than about size 28. The body font on this slide is 28. Here are some different sizes and what they look like. They vary a little bit in different fonts, but remember that people need to see it easily from the back of the room, and some people don't have perfect eyesight. Other things to consider are to keep the slides relatively clean. Don't make them too busy, only have a few words per slide. Have lots of white space, or in the case of this presentation, lots of blue space. Now, one mistake that many people make is to have too much information on their slides. If you have too much information, your audience doesn't know whether to read or whether to listen to you, and as a result, they don't do either well. So only put key words on your slides. This is not the way to go. This is much better, and a useful little trick is, if there are a few difficult words that you know you have trouble saying, put them on the slide. That way, if you mess them up, the audience will still know what you are saying. And here are some examples. Imagine that I'm giving a speech about the English language, and these are amongst the longest words: anti-disestablishmentarianism, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and electroencephalographically. So even if I make a mess of them, you still know what I'm saying. So consider using that little trick. And if you want to teach your audience to say something that is difficult, maybe you are doing something with language, you can break the text up for them into either syllables or into chunks, as I have done here. And again, you'd be using colours within your palette to help you to communicate your message. Another thing to consider is alignment. Again, be consistent across your slides. You can left align or right align, and both are good for different effects. Centering, though, generally isn't recommended for slides, as it's harder to focus on. Another area is transitions and effects. And it's possible, and maybe fun, to have lots of transitions. However, in a serious presentation, you need to be consistent, and you need to minimize the transitions. So don't get too caught up with the different things that you can do. Remember your audience and remember your message. Don't get distracted. So these are the things that we've looked at in terms of your visual concepts and graphic execution. We've looked at color schemes, graphics, fonts and font sizes, alignment, and transitions or effects. And now I've got a homework task for you. So consider all that we've looked at in this video. It's recommended that you stick to a palette of 3 to 4 colors, keep to 2 to 3 different fonts, and that graphics are large and bold. Now for homework, you need to make 1 or 2 slides related to your presentation and bring them to class on your laptop or pen drive. Also, please make sure that there is at least 1 laptop in your group in class this week. So let's come back to this graphic, and we can see that we've looked at the content and design, and in another video we'll look at the important area of delivery. Well, I hope that's given you some useful information, and That's it for today.